wanted to announce closer to the election date for various reasons, and those will be disclosed today. One of them was disclosed last night at the rally we had in Mandeville. So I'm going to hand over to Damian Crawford, Senator Damian Crawford. Julian, you're going to go next. Okay, sure. My apologies. Julian will be asked to speak next in the sequence of speakers that we have. And just to say in closing that our platform of ideas, our platform of programs for the Jamaican people is rooted in the struggles and the voices of the Jamaican people. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Party Leader, and good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, and those who are watching. I think it's important to explain to the country how the commitments that we have made are going to be funded. There are questions that have been asked of that. And I first want to start off by reaffirming the People's National Party's commitment to fiscal responsibility and prudent management of the economy. And I want to go back a little because I believe a historical perspective is important to look at what we did when we were last at the wicket. When we inherited the economy in 2012, the country was on the precipice of economic collapse. The last JLP administration from 2007 to 2011 had failed the last 3 IMF tests. In fact, they didn't even take the tests. Jamaica faced a significant trust deficit where our international partners simply didn't believe that we were capable of being responsible. When we inherited the economy in 2012 under the leadership of the Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller as Prime Minister and Dr. Peter Phillips as Minister of Finance, we had to undertake significant work, heavy lifting, to reestablish Jamaica's credibility with our international partners. What did we do? We enhanced and strengthened the fiscal rules, and we legislated, and I want to emphasize this, we legislated the debt to GDP projection so that we could get to 60% by 2028. And the reason I'm saying this, it is important to understand that whether it was a PNP, JLP, or NEP, it was a requirement for the government to follow the downward trajectory in our debt to GDP. So we were the ones who, having enhanced, ensured, took the country from the precipice, we are committed to continuing that responsibility. Now, questions have been asked about how will we fund these commitments. In the current fiscal policy paper, which is a document that accompanies the budget and it's tabled in March, the government's own projections for the next 3 years is that we will have an increase in government revenues of $140 billion over a 3-year period. And that is based on their projection of a growth rate of just 1%. But we intend to grow the economy by more than 1%. But this $140 billion is their projection. And I want to go back a little. In emphasizing our commitment to fiscal responsibility, we have no intention of imposing any new taxes to fund the commitments that we have made. So in addition to the organic revenue growth, which is based on the government's projections, the way our budget is structured, of the $1.3 trillion, there's an element for debt repayment, there's an element for wages and salaries, and then there's $360 billion, which is allocated to programs. Now, our programs and our priorities are different from the JLP's programs and priorities. And as such, we are going to place the things that we consider to be critical to improving the quality of life of all Jamaicans at the forefront of our priorities. So between the organic revenue growth, between the existing envelope that exists in the budget, our commitments can be funded. Now, last night, our party leader and opposition leader made a commitment that we would raise the income tax threshold to $3.5 million. The Labour Party has proposed reducing the income tax rate from 25 to 15%. I want to indicate how our proposal is a more equitable one, a more just one, and one which impacts a broader cross-section of individuals. Why? Because it will put more money in the pockets of those who are earning less. And by doing so, those individuals have a higher propensity to consume. So some of those funds which will go into their pockets will be spent back into the economy, and the government will benefit through indirect taxes like GCT. So we expect that what we are proposing will in fact help and support the growth that we are projecting for the economy, while being consistent with our principles of equity, fairness, and justice. So to reiterate, we will fund the commitments that have been made within the existing envelope of the budget, including the projections for growth, without any need to impose any new taxes or burdens on the Jamaican people. In fact, we committed to removing the tax on overtime so that we could put more money in the pockets of those soldiers, policemen, security guards, people who work in our hospitality sector, again, so that it eases the cost of living and gives them an opportunity to spend more on themselves and their families. So I'll now turn over to Damien.
Thank you very much, Julian. And as you have indicated, what we have indicated with our proposals up to last night and today is our commitment not to increasing taxes, but indeed to relief taxes. And it is more equitable, as that has been the central context of the People's National Party's proposals for the very longest time. As is indicated by our calculations, a teacher, for example, would only benefit from the Jamaica Labour Party's proposal to $80,000, while a person earning to the tune of $28 million, like the Prime Minister, will benefit $2.6 million. Therefore, this reduction from 25 to 15% would once again be disproportionately beneficial to persons like the Prime Minister, as versus in comparison to persons like teachers, policemen, nurses, security guards, and other persons employed under $3.5 million. It is important that we highlight to our teachers that under the People's National Party plan, over 80% of our teachers will pay no taxes and save up to $200,000 per year. That is an important implication moving forward. Additionally, our intent is to move towards growth, as was indicated by the future Minister of Finance, Julian Robinson, and the future Prime Minister of Jamaica, the future Right Honorable Mark Jefferson Golding. Indeed, therefore, we have recognized that there are some individuals who are disposed towards encouraging, engaging, and promoting growth, but they have been faced with the albatross of government debt, high interest, and high taxes over time. To this extent, we have proposed the Clean Slate program to give these individuals a fresh start. In the Clean Slate program, not only the aspect of student loan, and leader, my grandmother told me that if was the waiting would have done bees. They have taken a part of the student loan proposal that you have given 2 years ago and tried to suggest that that is of their own. And it's for reasons like the student loan proposal as well as the rent to own proposal that they have tried to adopt, to steal, that we decided to have a second component of the manifesto later on. Now, instead of just having the student loan where we'll forgive the interest rate, we will also put a moratorium on payment, giving you freedom to to actually go forth and build your lives and come back to paying that loan. The proposal from the Jamaica Labour Party, like has been the case over the multiple years, you have no moratorium and will ask for you to find full payment before the interest is removed and before that aspect is forgiven. The People's National Party is giving automatic forgiveness of interest and fees and giving you a moratorium of up to 3 years for you to get your life in order and come back to do the payment. Additionally, we're looking at other types of debt to the government, including GCT, including income tax owed, including property tax owed. Those are areas that we are changing. But the taxman out there would be happy to know that it also includes traffic tickets. And so we will give a moratorium of 3 years for you to get your life in order and come back to make your necessary payments to the government, having forgiven the albatross of interest and fees from around the necks of the people. We believe that this great clean off the slate, that this fresh start will allow for those persons inclined to productivity to then be able to once again access loans, and the persons like with student loan to be better able to get their mortgage instead, to better able to start their businesses, and to be better able to go back to schools in some cases to improve their skills. And so it is not just for the WASP to believe that there is a single forgiveness only for student loan, but a general reset of the society, a clean slate and a fresh start, so that persons can once again be a participant in our growth venture and be partners in the Jamaica Love program under the People's National Party. We turn over to Senator Donna Scott Marley.
Party leader, I was going to call on you to start up my mic for me. Because that's what you do, you lead. You lead as a servant leader, a leader who understands that sometimes they have to rescue members of their team. So good morning, everyone. When we launched the manifesto, we made it clear that it was a manifesto wrapped in love. Very much like a constitution, which reflects the values, the attitudes, and the will of the people. And this morning, when we launch now the People's Guide, it is a guide which will be adhered to by the People's Cabinet. Always listening, always reflecting what the people want. I tell you all the time, those of you who know me, that Floyd Morris taught me the most important lesson which guides the philosophy of the People's National Party. Nothing about us without us. And we are here simply to represent you, the people. So this plan was born from listening to Jamaicans, the tourism worker who was just getting tired of having to pay taxes on the tips, the young creative who was searching for a start, the pensioner who was suffering because they had retired at what was a reasonable pension, but now it has been eroded by the cost of living, which is simply unbearable. They don't make enough to pay their electricity bills anymore. So how we arranged it, and this is what I'm supposed to be really speaking to, is that everybody gets an answer to their question. And I want to share with you. Of course, you know I'm going to pick Clarendon first, right? So Rosalie from Lioneltown would want to know. She says, I want a house, but it feels impossible. Will I ever own land or a house? And later on, Stacy will explain to you how she will. Susie asks, how will I take home more money for my family? Kemar says, I am drowning in debt. How can I get a fresh start? And Damien has already spoken to people like Kemar, who need an opportunity to get a clean slate so that they can make a fresh start. These are the kinds of ways in which we have responded to people and which we commit we will always respond to people. So our constitution, our guide, is this document for the people. I will ask Stacey to elaborate on what has excited, obviously, the entire country, because the Jamaica Labour Party spent a considerable amount of time using it as though it was their own idea last night.
Thank you, Donna. Morning, everyone. I'm going to be speaking to land, housing, and ownership. I need a roof over my head. The words of the mighty Diamonds. Those words apply to every Jamaican. In fact, every human. But it's our responsibility to make sure that Jamaican people have access to suitable housing, land ownership. Equity and equality aren't the same thing. Equality means that you give the same thing to everybody, but equity demands that those who need a boost have that boost available to them so that we can all have similar outcomes. The PNP's land and housing policies start with a foundation that looks at the purpose for which the NHT was initially created. We will ensure that the NHT is focused on its original purpose and that the drawdown of $11.4 billion that takes place every year stops. The PNP will also build 50,000 homes for low-income earners over the next 5 years. That's approximately 10,000 homes per year. And just to put that into context, the housing deficit right now stands at 190,000 units. So we are aware that the 50,000 isn't the end of housing needs, but it's certainly far more than approximately 15,000 that have been over 9 years. The JLP had promised to build 70,000 homes in 2020, and they have failed to deliver on that promise. When we see, as Jamaicans say, one house being given out, that would take us hundreds of years to ever get to where we need to get to. One of our policies is attractive, especially to people like Kedisha, my nail tech, who works in the informal sector and cannot necessarily qualify easily for a mortgage. But the rent-to-own program will allow Kedisha to pay rent for 6 months, and the rent that she has paid will allow her to qualify, to prove her income qualifies her for the mortgage. And part of that 6-month rental can go towards the deposit. But I'm going to speak now to Ashley, because if she's not doing the rent to own, how will she find the deposit? And so the Young Owners Deposit Fund, $1 billion per year, will be available for $500,000 for each young person up to age 45 years who is an NHT contributor. That will go towards their deposit. So deposit is usually hard to find. You'll get $500,000 boost on that. Because as we said, equity demands that not everybody gets the same thing. And so persons with disabilities will benefit from reduced interest rates. And as a reward to our public sector workers, they too will benefit from reduced interest rates. And for the public sector workers, a 3-month grace period. So after they purchase a home, the first 3 months of the repayment of the mortgage, that will be waived, well, not waived, but that will be delayed to give them an opportunity to furnish their homes. Because when you buy a new home, your income really is stretched before you can regularly make those mortgage payments. So the PNP is really committed. We are committed as a party to ensuring that that roof over your head is available to every Jamaican. And there's more. The debt service ratio will be increased to 40% so that persons can qualify for a mortgage on up to 40% of their disposable income, which will increase the number of people who will qualify for that mortgage. Those are some of the foundational issues. Now, a house can't be built just on a foundation. Then you got to have the walls, yeah? And our walls start with some unfinished business. Operation Pride, that the People's National Party administration, previous administration, some of it was left unfinished, and we are committed, the incoming administration, to complete that work. In addition, people who live on informal land settlements can't qualify easily to have a title. And a title gives you more than just having the house. It gives you security, financial security, and opens options for borrowing on your title. And so we will regularize informal land settlements. And there are many of those in my constituency, so I know my constituents like Chris and Nisha will be happy to hear that. The Portia Initiative, it is the program for the organized renewal of and transformation of infrastructure in all areas. That initiative, named after our beloved leader, of course, that looks at improving infrastructure renewal and urban upgrading, things like sidewalks, parks. I don't like to call them green spaces, I prefer the word parks, drainage, and such, and removal of zinc fences and replacing those with concrete walls. These things instill pride in our people. Also, for persons with disabilities, there will be a commitment that 20%, up to 20% of houses built by the Housing Association of Jamaica will be available to persons with disabilities. And retirement homes, we will ensure that partnering with the churches, retirement homes are built for our senior citizens, and this will impact persons of all income levels, because senior citizens require, need, and deserve the care from our state to ensure that they can live their lives in dignity. Whether the family members have deceased or moved abroad or just moved out, our senior citizens need companionship. One of the big announcements in the recent budget presentations was the reduction in the time for adverse possession of government lands, and that is a firm commitment. Currently, the time stands at 60 years, which is a little long. It's more than a generation, really, of lifetime. And so that will be reduced to 25 years. Now, this is for government lands, so we're not giving away anybody's land, right? The laws on adverse possession remain the same for privately owned lands, which means that people need to continue to protect their titles by fencing your properties and making sure that you don't allow people to possess it if you don't want them to. Basically, the People's National Party's commitment to home ownership and putting that roof over people's head means that we are continuing our long legacy of building houses for people. Many, in fact, the majority of the housing developments right across Jamaica were built by the People's National Party. And I want to just end the myth that says anything otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Stacy. Just to clear up something that I heard last night, I heard the outgoing Prime Minister of Jamaica making reference to the fact that the rent-to-own policy is something that he spoke about before. He went further to suggest that we are saying that you can just rent anybody's home and then own it. It is a lie. It is in keeping with his character, so I'm not surprised, but it is a lie. We have never said that. What we've said is that we will build 50,000 houses, and that when we build those, at least 500 per constituency, that if persons who are working in the informal sector who don't have a pay stub, that they can move into that house, and once they show us after 6 months that they can pay the rent, which is equivalent to the mortgage, and shows that they're reliable, then we will convert it from rent to a mortgage. And I would suggest to Mr. Holness to pay a little attention to details. I know it's not your strength, but pay a little attention to details and do not mislead the public. I'm going to ask Senator Crawford to come back in, and he will speak to some of the partnerships.
Thank you, future Minister Dayton Campbell. I've always warned you about applying malice when there's possible logic. I'm not sure if the Prime Minister is lying. He might just not understand what we had proposed. And because he doesn't understand it, he might not be able to cross it after the 3rd of September. We must also indicate that there are persons such as policemen, teachers, and others within our society that have been stuck in the albatross of paying rent, incapable to save enough for them to eventually move towards a mortgage. And the rent to own therefore also help those individuals who are now paying $100,000, $200,000 rent and therefore rendered incapable. That in particular applies to young individuals wanting to move out of their parents' home, but also rural individuals who have migrated to Kingston and have no other option than paying rent. I've known persons with incomes of teachers up to $250,000 with a rent of $110,000 and groceries of $60,000, a car payment of $30,000, and is incapable even to send something for their mom when they're the first in their family to make it, with 2 sisters still in high school. The People's National Party is relieving that burden to give you that opportunity to move forward in short order. However, as has been given our indicators, we so much want our people to consume the ideas, to consume the plans, and to recognize this march on to progress, that we have simplified the document to a point that you can find your space and how it impacts you directly, even outside of how it can impact you in generality. And so one of those areas we want to speak to is the security forces, and this is our way of thanking those security forces, JCF and the JDF, for their contribution and for their success in recent times in assisting in the benefits of the reduction in criminal activity. These persons, we say, under the People's National Party government, the members of the JCF and the JDF will receive priority in some of our rent-to-own housing schemes that will be developed. Additionally, police officers and JDF individuals wishing to be qualified in a particular area for promotion will receive grants and scholarships to pursue the necessary qualifications. Security force personnel will receive a reviewed health insurance coverage to include also the psychological demands of the job. We will undertake to review the life insurance paid to security force personnel killed in the line of duty to up to $20 million and ensure that insurance and pension benefits are paid over no later than 6 months after a tragic event. We will prioritize the consideration of police applications for firearm approval through the firearm approval process, especially for active police officers. We will remove the tax and overtime pay, even as we have already removed the tax on up to $3.5 million as the new threshold. So therefore, for most police officers, they will not have to pay any taxes. And for those who go up to $6 million due to overtime, they too will find relief. For senior citizens, to whom we're grateful for the nation that they have contributed to create, we'll establish a national health insurance card for senior citizens over 65. This will not only cover drugs, but also cover diagnostics, doctor's visits, surgery, and as well medication. But the march to a national health insurance isn't reserved only to those over 65. We will also give full health coverage to those 0 to 18, i.e. children. So children 0 to 18 will be covered with a health card that will cover diagnostics, doctor's visits, medication, surgery, hospital stay, as well as certain autistic interventions and disability interventions moving forward. For the senior citizens, we will focus on the mobilization of senior citizens with skills and expertise to help drive national development at the community level through the National Seniors Service located within the National Institute of Volunteerism. We will remove the wait for pension payments by starting payments at the age of 65 on your 65th birthday. Now we'll move to taxi operators. Knowing the perils of the deteriorating roads, and also knowing that taxi and private operators, bus operators, are an essential service, transporting more than 75% of Jamaicans to healthcare, to work, to school, and to other activities. We will reduce the transport authority fee to $1,000. So the transport authority fee will be reduced so that it can have some free up space, some money available to fix those front ends caused by the very bad roads that the government have allowed through their deterioration. We reduce that fee to $1,000, and this in particular was encouraged by future Prime Minister Mark Golding after the meeting with the taxi operators. But additionally, there will be a special loan fund with low interest rate to create cash flow on parts and services for taxi operators to borrow through credit unions and utilize to ensure roadworthiness of their vehicles. The People's National Party will set up police presence as far as is possible in all major bus terminals, but also have a transportation response unit with a special distress signals for taxis to ensure their safety. The final one before we turn over to Dayton to indicate some others, I couldn't leave without speaking to our teachers. Teachers will receive internet as a tool of trade. We know that you can't say power without say knowledge, because knowledge is power, and the People's National Party is committed to improving knowledge through access to information. Teachers will be a priority for the PNP's rent-to-own program. For every year spent teaching in the public school, there will be a relief of a student loan or student loan forgiveness for that year that they teach in the public school. The PNP government will make extensive investments in infrastructure, school infrastructure over the next 5 years, leading to better working conditions for teachers. Teachers will receive special NHD considerations to facilitate easier access to housing. We will also facilitate access to motor vehicle ownership through a graduated concession. Before I hand over to you, Dayton, I would just like to tell a story of a teacher who got over 95% passes in English language at an all-boys school. I engaged this teacher to understand the basis of such success. In the middle of the conversation, the teacher had to ask to hang up to call a taxi so that she can get to school. This teacher would be rife for recruitment for overseas persons trying to take our best teachers away. The People's National Party will have a graduating concession allowing for more teachers to have easier access to motor vehicles, to reward them for the work that they have done, the work that they will be doing, and the work that they will continue to do when the People's National Party takes power. Dayton.
Thank you very much, Senator Crawford. The full document will be released later today, so persons who are interested will be able to view the sector that they have the interest in. We have several other love partners, including faith-based organization. We believe that the church plays a critical role in the ordering of the society to be peaceful, to have proper values and morals, and as such we are supportive of the faith-based organization, and a fund will be put in place that they can use to do their activities. The story has been told that everything is well in Jamaica by the other side. As you go out there and you interact with people, you get the different side to the coin, the next side to the coin, that much more can be done. People are hopeful. They're looking forward to a better quality of life, and that is what we're offering them here today. We're going to take a few questions, if there are any. I know it was pellucid, so there may not be any questions, but if there are any questions, we will take those. And then after that, we will have a wrap-up from the leader of the party. Laverne, yes.
Morning, everyone. I have 3 questions, and you could decide who takes them. Very often, the party that is in opposition makes pledges on the campaign trail that falls by the wayside.
At your service, sir.
Yes, very often the party in opposition makes pledges on the campaign trail that fall by the wayside as soon as they take office. Usually, the reason is that they did not have a full or a very clear picture of the country's prevailing economic situation. My question is, why should Jamaicans not dismiss this proposal to raise the income tax threshold as another political ploy? That's one. 2, if the People's National Party is victorious in the general election, how soon after will this policy be implemented? If you could give some specifics. And then finally, also, if you could list the top 3 priority policy proposals of all the proposals that you have made. If you could say to the people of Jamaica what you consider to be the top 3 and to give specific implementation dates for those 3 policies that you have selected. Those are my questions.
Well, on the priorities, on the last one, I would just say that different proposals fall into different categories. So, for example, the proposal to empower people to own land who have been occupying land for 25 years but are not in a position to acquire title to it because the law implemented in the colonial era requires 60 years of possession. We intend to deal with that as a legislative priority. Similarly, some of the reforms around greater accountability in government that we are committed to, we will be looking to implement those as well through developing and bringing the legislation to Parliament. On the other hand, there are programmatic things like the subsidy for school feeding, which we call the EASE program. That's a vital thing for us. There is the RIDE program, which is a subsidy for children who are struggling to attend school 5 days a week, where we're providing a transportation subsidy for up to 20,000 people. And of course, the First in Family Scholarship Program, which we are committed to ensuring that the first person in the household, if they are the first ones to have applied to and qualified or are attending university or college, they can get a full scholarship. So those things which are programmatic and require expenditure, those would be 3 priorities for us. But I think you have to differentiate between those things which are priorities because they involve reforms which don't necessarily involve expenditure changes, and those which are of a programmatic nature, which will require expenditure changes. And I've outlined for you what I regard as our priorities. In terms of the first question, which is the propensity of oppositions to promise things which cannot be delivered, one thing I would say to you is that because of the reforms that were implemented when we were last in government, to bring greater transparency to the public financial affairs of the country, the information available to the opposition is better than it has been in years gone by. So, for example, the fiscal policy paper, which is tabled as one of the budget documents, and there's also an interim one that's tabled in September each year to because some of the numbers in March are not final numbers for the previous year's budget. So a supplementary one, an interim one is published each year, is full of very critical information on the economy and on the public finances, including projections as to future revenues, but also a vast array of other things. Similarly, there's information on tax expenditures, which are a technical word meaning waivers and other discretionary relief of taxes and the cost of that to the public purse, and the medium-term debt management strategy of the government, which looks forward and says, what are we going to do to manage our debt as best we can? So those are all mandatory documents that have to be tabled with the budget each year, and in September in the case of the interim fiscal policy paper. So that enables an opposition to have a fairly good idea of what is possible fiscally in terms of what we can do. Having said that, we know that when we come into government, there will be many things that were not disclosed publicly and which we will have to deal with. That is the reality of when there's a change of government. And we know, for example, that right now there are unsettled claims from the public sector workers which have to be addressed. They've been offered 0%, which is not really an offer at all. And there are various anomalies in the public sector transformation of their compensation, which we are committed to working with the public sector unions and the representatives of the public sector workers to resolve those anomalies. But there may be many other things that we are not fully aware, claims from contractors in respect of things that have gone wrong on projects and so on. There are a number of things that we would not be privy to and which we would have to adjust when we form government. But the overall lay of the land, we have a much better picture, I would say, than would have been the case, say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Julian, if you want to talk to you can answer the other question you had about the timing of our implementation.
Yeah, well, we're currently in the middle of a budget year, and I would say the new fiscal year would start April 1st, and so the commitments that have been made would commence certainly in relation to the tax threshold at that time. We may make adjustments, and we may have to do supplementary budgets in terms of how you move expenditures within the current band, as has been done in the past. So if you're moving monies from one ministry to another, you're required to do a supplementary budget. So that, again, is a decision that we would make once we get in. But that is a possibility because, as I've said, our priorities and the programs are certainly different from what exists with the current government.
I wanted to add one point, which I think is very important, because a false impression has been deliberately sowed by the government that we will discontinue all existing government programs and policies. That's absolute nonsense. We recognize that in the $360 billion envelope for programs, there's a vast array of programs. Some of them are long-standing and fundamental, such as the PATH program, which was started by the People's National Party and provides support for vulnerable children and vulnerable citizens. And we would never do anything to reduce that. In fact, to the contrary, we're trying to bolster that by some of the other areas which need similar support, such as the Ease and the Ride programs that we've come up with. On the other hand, there are many other programs which represent a decision of the government of the day to pursue a particular policy initiative, which we may defer, for example, if we don't anticipate that it would have a negative impact on the quality of life of the Jamaican people. We will not be doing anything that would have a negative impact on the quality of life of the Jamaican people. So we will be working within the envelope of the budget, but we will be adjusting those things that we don't think need to be brought forward so we can bring forward the things that we think are essential for making life better for the people of Jamaica at this time.
Thank you.
We should also remind the public that issues like the drill have indicated that the Jamaica Labour Party is engaged in general overspending and over-invoicing. Cornwall Regional will be an excellent example that has moved from 2 to 22 billion. We have no intention to be so wasteful in government as they were. And so we will seek those wastes and ensure that it is properly directed to the people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a critical point. Public resources are being wasted in large amounts by this government through corruption, through distortions in the procurement system, and through the inefficient and negligent management of major projects. The Cornwall Regional is an example of that, where a project which was originally to be finished within a short space of time and for $2 billion expenditure has now gone over 20 billion. I think it's 24 billion is the nearest number, with no accountability for that delay, and with the hospital still not open to receive patients in terms of the refurbished parts of it. Similarly, the drill, which is just symptomatic of what is going on in that ministry. I'm sure if we go in there, we're going to find many other things, where things which are in the marketplace for one price are being bought by the government from contractors in which members close to the government have financial interests for multiples of the market price, depriving the people of Jamaica of resources for critical things. In the health sector, it's CAT scan. There's no CAT scan machine at Bustamante Children's Hospital, the main largest children's hospital in the Caribbean. And it is that type of scandalous behavior which is ripping off the people of Jamaica and making our lives much harder than they should be. And I just want to make one additional point, if I may, on this tax proposal that they have come up with. If you reduce the income tax rate from 25 to 15, it means that somebody who's earning $30 to $40 million of income and who's paying $10 million of tax is going to end up paying $4 million less tax that the people of Jamaica need to fund the programs to support the society. Our program, and our proposal, which is to increase the threshold, means that the people who need it most, everyone will benefit who pays income tax now, including the man earning 30 to 40 million, but his benefit or her benefit will be no greater than the benefit that the teacher, that the benefit that the police officer, that the benefit that the nurse is getting, which is 100% relief on their first $3.5 million of income. And that is why it's a more progressive, just and fair solution than what they are offering, where ministers of government, prime ministers and others will get a huge tax break by their policy and their proposal, which our proposal will not do. Our proposal is equitable and ensures that those who need it most are the ones who get the benefit.
Thank you, Leader. And just to note that if somebody is at 3.5 million, the actual increase in take-home would be $35,000 per month. Now, you would actually be able to buy a proper vehicle and not the $2,000 or Pro Box.
Judge, with permission, I want to address a question which has been asked and which has been very concerning to me, and that is why does the PNP talk so much about corruption? There are people who feel that we shouldn't be speaking about it, and that bothers me because that means that it is being normalized more and more in our society. I want to remind you that it was Metri Siaga, who is now the president of the PSOJ, who said in 2019 that corruption actually cost us 5% of GDP. He said it cost us over 35 million US annually. And if we deal with issues like that, these programs which we speak about they are self-funding. So when we are talking about corruption, we are not only saying that a leader leads the country's moral compass, sets the value and the tone for every member of the society, but that in actual real terms, 5% of GDP is a significant amount which we can put to programs which can grow our economy and, more importantly, grow our people who will then be contributing to growing our economy.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? If not, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Just to point out the partners, the love partners that you'll be able to see shortly from the document. There is a section for the nurses, micro, small, and medium enterprises, entertainment industry, hopeful homeowners, Rastafari communities, rural youth, security forces, senior citizens, small tourism entrepreneurs, taxi operators, teachers, university students, and of course, the faith-based groups that I spoke about earlier. So we have considered all, and there is something that is there to ensure that we can have a better quality of life collectively as a people. I want to invite the leader, to just give the closing remarks. And yes, sir.
Thank you very much, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I just wish to close by reaffirming our party's commitment to prudent fiscal management and ensuring that the gains that have been made over the past 15 years as a result of the reforms which were largely implemented under the Portia Simpson Miller administration to ensure that the public debt was brought down to manageable levels on a sustainable basis by putting it in the law how you can spend money and what money is available for spending. We are committing to maintaining that methodology of running the country. But there is so much more that is required to make Jamaica a better place. And our policies and programs, as outlined in our manifesto and summarized with some additional elements in the People's Guide launched today, will ensure that Jamaicans have a better quality of life going forward, that our people will be more productive going forward, that our human capital will be developed so that we can move the country forward from the stagnant economy which we find ourselves in to one which generates high levels of inclusive and sustainable economic growth, so that our people can meet their aspirations from the opportunities created right here at home, and I don't have to be looking to go abroad to make it in life. So I urge everyone to listen and to read what we are publishing and to listen to what we say about it over the next coming days, and on the 3rd of September to cast their vote for the People's National Party for whichever candidate you may have in your constituency who has the head beside their name on the ballot, so that we can move forward. I'm asking for your support respectfully, humbly, and with a great deal of gratitude for your participation in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. X beside the head. God bless you.